So here we are, 32 months into recovery, and thought it would be good to kind of capture at least one small part of what's been going on here. In part to kind of share what's going on, in part also for reference, so that maybe a year or two from now we can look back and see some tremendous progress. But this is kind of important because a little more than a year ago, January and February of 2009, my GPS case was reevaluated by two neurospecialists. They did multiple MRIs and also some nerve electrical conduction tests. And at that time the diagnosis was I was done healing. And that was difficult news to absorb because at the time many things in my body were still not working very well. And just one example of that is fingers. So the body is interesting on how it heals though, and an example, well, both hands initially look like this for the first 3 or 4 months coming out of the hospital. And then after about 5 months, miraculously in December of 2007, the left hand started to heal itself. Over a 3-week period, it went from being droopy like this to being able to lift these fingers again. So I was thinking, great, any month now the right hand will come back. But 6 months went by and nothing came back, at least not on the hands, but somewhere else came back. So at the 12-month point in June of 2008, I became able to stand on tiptoes again, which is kind of a big deal. You can't reach the top shelf of anywhere in your house or garage without getting on tiptoes. And at the time, most of that power came from the left foot. And still, most of the power is from the left foot. Right foot, very, very slow progress. Can't quite do it to this day, but it's stronger than it was 12 months ago. But back to our hands. So I'd gotten this awful news from the doctors and basically had noticed the body does things that on its own schedule. And then sure enough, in July of 2009, this hand went from this to about this in about a 3 or 4 week period. And now, well, I can almost bring them straight. But without that, what I'm about to show you wouldn't have even been possible. Funny thing about playing piano, but if you don't have these 3 fingers to work with, you can't play melody. And forget about playing classical or anything like that, but just being able to play melody of a tune like Schubert's Serenade or anything like that doesn't work. You can lift your whole hand and put it down and playing chords, and that's it, because that's the only way you can get your fingers off the keys. So starting in late July of 2009, I started to use this book. So, to get through the next wave of progress, we take out the infamous Hannon book. You can look and see this is a bunch of pretty dense exercises, lots of 16th notes, and thankfully most of the first half of the book is all on the white keys. So realizing with that diagnosis that really there was going to be no free progress anymore, can't sit on the sofa and hope that the nerves would come back, the one thing they told me was, with what nerves you do have left, the thing that you can do is double the muscle strength around the remaining nerves and get some additional functionality back. So this book is specifically to strengthen the fingers for playing piano. And in the medical thing, we had something called an occupational therapist. They would have us pick up paper clips and sort different colors of marbles so that you could use your fingers just well enough to go back to work. But unfortunately, that's not good enough to play melody. So after 5 months, after these fingers started coming back, and after 5 months of work, I could play the first 6 exercises in this book at roughly this speed. This is my good old friend, the metronome. What do you think of that, Katrina?
I don't like the metronome. It's annoying.
Well, I don't really like the metronome either.
And you say he's your friend.
But I'll call him my friend because he helps me measure progress. And this is where I was after the first 5 months. very fun song to play, and you imagine a whole book of these songs, but this is how the fingers come back. One trench at a time, one tree line at a time. It's like retaking Iwo Jima now, not just waiting for a magical recovery. You can see the hammers down here are pretty thick. They are actually weigh much more than the hammers up here. And before in playing piano I could never really tell the difference very clearly, but now when you go from the high keys to the low keys, you can definitely tell it's a workout. So the good news is, what I just played was about where I was at the beginning of 2010. And to be realistic, I was actually a little sloppier than that and not quite as much precise. Most of these need to be much more precise, but that's the goal to become a classical pianist. And I'm really just trying to rebuild finger strength. So at the beginning of the year, I could only play about 6 or 7 exercises, and I marked down exactly where I was with speed at that time. I'm just coming up to a time where I'm going to write this down again. And the good thing is, now I'm up to having done 16 exercises, and on the metronome, I bumped up the speed,
sadly,
on most of these exercises by about 10%. Doesn't sound like a big difference, but if you listen to the same exercise again, you'll be able to tell it's actually quite a bit faster. Thanks for Katrina for the close-up of my face. Sometimes I make funny faces when I'm playing because you actually have to play, or for me, to get through these, it takes quite a bit of concentration. And there's a kind of a side benefit of that because, as I had told a friend once, when I'm doing this, I'm absolutely present in doing it because it takes every bit of concentration I have to do it. So you can see that one is 10% faster. I'm going to show you, here's another one I can play a little bit faster. It uses a little bit different fingers. You might want to catch this on the keyboard, Katrina. And this will take all I have.